Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're really getting into something fundamental, I think, to what makes us human. This deep, tangled relationship between music and language.
Yeah, it's fascinating. For a long time, the common idea, was that music was just nice, a sort of evolutionary afterthought.
Right, that famous phrase, auditory cheesecake. Pleasant, but not essential.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But when you look at sources like, say, the Singing Neanderthals or Beethoven's Anvil, they really push back hard against that. They make us ask a much bigger question.
Which is?
Well, did music just sort of branch off after we got language sorted? Or did they actually grow up together, maybe from some shared root way back?
Because the standard story usually puts complex language first, doesn't it? Then maybe music comes later as culture develops.
That's been the assumption. But our mission today, looking at the evidence evolutionary brain science, how kids learn, is to explore if that timeline is actually backwards.
So you're saying we need to look further back than, like, the first fully modern Homo sapiens?
Way further back. We need to tune into what communication might have sounded like long before words as we know them existed. Back to the very beginning.
And that beginning sounds less like poetry and more like a hum.
That's a great way to put it. Let's talk about this idea called the hypothesis. It's an acronym, actually.
Yeah, okay, break it down for us.
So, holistic, manipulative, multimodal, musical, and mimetic. Basically, a communication system used by earlier hominids, maybe Homo ergaster, definitely Neanderthals.
Holistic, meaning like the whole message is in one go, not broken down into words.
Precisely. No grammar, no separate words, really. Think of it as using the music of the voice, the rhythm, the pitch changes, the melody to convey the entire emotional state. Not "I'm scared," but a vocalization embodying fear.
So it's conveying things like joy, anxiety, maybe group warnings.
Exactly. Shame, guilt, cooperation signals, all packaged in sound contours, maybe with gestures too. That's the multimodal part. It's about sharing feeling and intention directly.
Okay, but where does the musical ability itself come from? The rhythm, the pitch control? The sources suggest it's not just about the voice box.
No, not at all. This is where it gets really interesting. It seems tied to something incredibly basic. Walking upright. Bipedalism.
Walking. How does walking make you musical?
Well, think about it. Starting maybe 1.8 million years ago with Homo ergaster, walking efficiently, and especially endurance running. That requires incredibly precise timing. Constant sensoromotor control to keep balance, coordinate limbs, maintain a rhythm.
Ah, so the pressure was just to move effectively, to survive on the savannah, not to sing songs.
Right. The argument is that we essentially got rhythm because our bodies had to manage complex, coordinated rhythmic movement just to get around. It built the neural pathways for timing.
That's kind of mind-blowing. Our musical sense starting with our feet, not our ears.
And there's another piece. That upright posture, it had a side effect. It gradually pushed the larynx, the voice box, lower down in the throat compared to other primates.
Okay. And why does that matter?
A lower larynx creates a larger resonance space, the pharynx. That allows for a much wider variety of sounds to be produced. It wasn't selected for speech or singing at first.
It was an accident?
Kind of an accidental pre-adaptation, as the sources might say. It just happened as our posture changed, but it created the raw acoustic potential for complex vocalization much later.
Which brings us up to the Neanderthals. They seem like the masters of this system, right? The Singing Neanderthals paints them as pretty vocally capable.
It does. Anatomically, if you look at fossil evidence like the hypoglossal canal, that's for tongue nerve control, or the vertebral canals linked to breathing control, Neanderthals look surprisingly modern. They likely had the fine motor control needed for speech-like sounds.
Wait, so they had the hardware for speech, potentially, but they didn't use it for language like ours. They stuck with the
That seems to be the idea. They probably used that sophisticated vocal control for a really advanced version of rich in emotional tone, rhythm, melody, shared understanding within their small, tight-knit groups. But maybe without the symbolic compositional grammar that lets us talk about, abstract ideas or things not immediately present.
So different communication for a different kind of social life, almost.
Plausibly, yes. Highly effective for their needs, but not language as we define it.
Okay, so evolution sets up the body for rhythm and sound. Fast forward to us, modern humans with complex brains. How do music and language actually play out in our heads now? Do they share brain space?
They do, and it's revealing. There's overlap, but also specialization. Broadly speaking, the left hemisphere is dominant for processing the symbolic stuff in language, word, meaning, grammar, sentence structure.
And the logical side, sort of.
Yeah. While the right hemisphere seems more tuned into the emotional tone, the prosody, the melody of speech, it's also heavily involved in our sense of body awareness, our integrated physical self, which connects back to that sensorimotor rhythm thing we talked about.
That makes sense. And this brain setup, does it explain those intense flow states musicians talk about?
Yeah,
Losing yourself in the music.
absolutely. That feeling of altered states of consciousness, or ASCs, during performance is really interesting. Think about what happens. Your sense of being a distinct self is often tied to your inner voice, right? That constant stream of thoughts, your internal monologue.
Yeah, the voice in your head.
When musicians are deep in flow, perfectly synchronized with others, performing almost automatically, that inner speech often just stops. It goes quiet.
And when the inner narrator disappears?
The anchor for the individual self is gone. You get this boundary loss emerging with the music, with the other performers. It's not just you anymore.
And critically, it's often a shared feeling, linking back to that original social bonding idea of,
Exactly. This isn't just happening inside one person's head. It's an emergent property of interacting brains syncing up. You hear people like Ringo Starr talking about moments playing with the Beatles where we all feel like one. That's not just poetic license. It's describing a real neurodynamic state. It's about creating shared intentionality, that we-ness, through synchronized sound and action.
So the basic sound material itself, did early forms of music reflect these different jobs, raw emotion versus something closer to speech?
There's some really interesting historical musicology on this. Kurt Sachs, decades ago, noticed two fundamental types of melody in early or simple music traditions.
Okay, what are they?
First, you have what he called tumbling strains. These tend to start high and then fall downwards in pitch.
Kind of like a shout that trails off, or maybe a wail.
Precisely. He described them as reminiscent of savage shouts of joy or wails of rage. Very raw, very direct emotional expression through the contour of the sound itself, closely aligned with that original holistic emotional function.
Got it. And the second type?
He called them horizontal melodies. These are quite different. They tend to hover around a central pitch with smaller variations up or down.
Like chants, or maybe nursery rhymes. Old MacDonald kind of thing.
Exactly like that. Their structure isn't about pure emotional release. Instead, these melodies are shaped to fit the rhythm and meaning of words. They become, as Sachs put it, realistic speech melodies.
So this is where you see the split happening. One path stays purely musical and emotional, the other adapts to carry language.
That's the idea. You can almost see the divergence point in these basic melodic forms.
Okay, connecting all this back to today. If, was this ancient system, are there still echoes of it around? You mentioned how kids learn.
Oh, absolutely. The strongest, most obvious living remnant has to be infant-directed speech, or IDS. Parentese or motherese.
The way people instinctively talk to babies. High-pitched, sing-songy.
Exactly. It's universal across cultures. Higher pitch, wider pitch range, slower tempo, lots of repetition, exaggerated melodic contours. It's fundamentally musical. And it's not just cute. It's doing crucial work.
What's the work? Why is that musicality better than just talking normally to an infant?
Well, think about spoken language. It's actually a continuous stream of sound. There aren't neat little silences between words like there are spaces in writing.
Right, it all runs together.
So how does a baby figure out where one word ends and the next begins? IDS uses those exaggerated musical cues, the pitch changes, the rhythmic patterns, to help the infant segment the stream. They're basically using the musical features to find the word boundaries.
Using their musical ear to learn language structure. That's clever.
And infants are incredibly good at it. Research shows that even by 8 months, they're like natural-born statisticians, meaning they can track the probabilities of sounds following other sounds. And studies show they use this same statistical learning ability whether they're listening to streams of syllables or streams of musical tones.
Wow. So the brain tool for analyzing musical patterns and language patterns is basically the same tool, at least early on.
It strongly suggests a shared cognitive foundation. Which leads to another fascinating point about infants and pitch. Infants are often born with perfect pitch, the ability to identify a note absolutely, without reference to other notes.
But most adults don't have that. We have relative pitch knowing intervals, like this note is higher than that one.
Exactly. We mostly lose perfect pitch as we develop language. Why? Because language requires relative pitch. You need to recognize the word hello as the same word whether it's spoken by someone with a jip voice or a high voice. The absolute pitches are different, but the relative pitch contour, the melody, is similar.
So recognizing the pattern across different speakers forces us to prioritize relative pitch over absolute pitch. Language acquisition actually reshapes our pitch perception.
It seems so. Language demands generalization, and relative pitch is key for that. It's not just IDS. Think about gestures, too.
The hand movements we make when we talk.
Yeah, those spontaneous gestures that aren't formal sign language. They often convey information about speed, size, direction, holistic, non-symbolic information that complements the words. It's another echo of that multimodal system still helping us communicate.
Okay, so pulling this all together, we've gone from early hominids getting rhythm by walking, to Neanderthals humming their feelings, to how our brains handle sound, to how babies learn words using music. The big takeaway seems clear.
Which is?
That music and language weren't these separate things that evolved independently. They grew together, intertwined from the very start, out of this older, richer, more musical way of communicating.
That's absolutely the core idea from these sources.
Yeah.
Music, or proto-music within the system, wasn't just decoration. It was adaptive. It was crucial for social bonding, for creating that shared intentionality, that synchrony needed for groups to cooperate and survive. It's arguably the bedrock of human sociality.
There's a twist in the modern world, isn't there? You touch on this provocative idea at the end.
Yeah, it's a really interesting dynamic to think about. Music starts as this fundamental tool for bringing people together, for linking nervous systems, creating a we.
The ultimate icebreaker.
Pretty much. But as societies get bigger and more complex, something else happens. Musical styles themselves start to diverge, to take on distinct identities. They become almost like cultural markers or cultural species.
Meaning different styles for different groups.
Exactly. And then you see how different genres, punk versus classical, or different subgenres of electronic music, whatever, can be used not just to express identity within a group, but actually to draw boundaries between groups. They can reinforce social divisions.
So the very thing that evolved to create unity can now be used to signal difference, even opposition.
It's a fascinating paradox, isn't it? The same neural mechanisms that allowed for deep cooperation can now fuel cultural separation, sometimes quite intensely.
That really is something to think about. So the next time you find yourself lost in a piece of music,
remember, you're plugging into something incredibly ancient. That feeling of connection, or even that boundary loss, that's tapping into the neurodynamics that help make us human in the first place.
But maybe also ask yourself, who is this music connecting you to, and who might it be subtly separating you from? It's complicated.
Listen actively. Think about the layers.
Definitely food for thought.